Hello, this is Cotton Stoops, and in today's Lumion Legacy read-write video, we're going to be talking about Luminami. Luminami can play multiple roles on a team, and that makes Luminami one of the best and consistent Lumions in the entire game. In order to know how to use Luminami, you must learn its counters and checks in teammates, and of course, in order to team build around it, you need to know its roles and sets. And in today's video, we're going to be covering all of that topics, all under the umbrella of how to use and counter Luminami. So the role that Luminami is going to be playing, I'm going to be honest, everyone knows that has played this game, knows what it does, but just for the sakes of this video, I'm going to be doing a more in-depth analysis into it. So Luminami's base speed wise actually is pretty decent for it. While this is a quote-unquote weakness and really is not that good, you have the ability Power Napper to synergize with Flash and Flee, so you can take damage and regain HP while swapping out. You also do have some pretty decent attacking stats. Do note that these are actually what I think are Luminami's main weaknesses. While it does have the coverage, which I'll be talking about in the sets, it naturally doesn't hit hard. So you're gonna have to be watching out for a lot more stuff that can set up on you. And as for your energy stat of 88, this allows you to use a lot of bit of moves without waiting or resting and gets you up to some pretty common benchmarks. You do have a pretty decent HP and melee and range defense stat. This allows you to pretty much go into whatever you want and also be pretty bulky at that. This is even more reinforced with its defensive typing. You do have 4 weaknesses to Dark, Plant, Electric, and Toxic. I can't lie to you, Dark is a very common typing in this metagame with all the slapdown users. Plant even more so, you got Lashent, Sober's Gas Stroke, Totab, and Nevermare. Electric types, not so much, you still have Zulong and the likes, and Toxic types even less. However, these are weaknesses that you still have to watch out for. Some other pretty good stuff, however, is you do have some pretty good resistances to Water, Plant, Ice, Ancient, and Light, all being 5, or no, it's actually 6. And you have an immunity to Spirit. This allows Luminami to wall a lot of pretty good stuff, such as Soulburst Eruptodon, Land Torch. It can even check the likes of Glaciadia pretty well. And due to the fact that its bulk is pretty spread out, Luminami, because of Power Napper, can just pivot in and out and apply pressure with your offensive or defensive threats coming in for free. Luminami necessarily isn't the most dominating wall, but it has the ability to just swap in and out on a lot of things, and if you're playing very well using your resistances to swap into the match, then this is how that Luminami is pretty much considered one of the best ones. Anyways, it's pretty clear that its role is a slow pivoter. It answers most of the metagame due to the fact of its resistances, and with its great bulk and slow speed, it allows itself to be a pretty decent pivot. And of course, we're going to be reinforcing that idea with its sets. So the first set, I'm actually going to be going over 3 sets, but this is going to be the first one that I'll be talking about. First off, I want to talk about a robust pivot set, the most common set for Luminami. You're going to be running the ability Power Napper. Awakening, I really do not recommend because you don't really have the best defensive stats to actually risk a Rejuvenate. I would pretty much run Power Napper here. Power Napper is just as good, and Rejuvenate you don't really need at all. So I would run Power Napper. As for your personality, brawny, robust, and very sluggish. Me personally, I want my Luminami to hit somewhat hard, and of course, running a double positive personality allows you to make yourself as slow as possible, so you can underspeed as much as you can. For future notice, most of these Luminamis will be running 0 speed UPs, so make sure you get those Dark Shards. Your moveset is going to be Mega Chomp and Flash and Flee. These are going to be your main 2 moves. Mega Chomp is to punish the plant types from swapping in, and as for your other moveset, I would prefer to run Frost Beam and Wave Breaker. I would not suggest Rejuvenate at all. Frost Beam is mainly for the likes of Totab, Nevermare, Lashent, and Sober's Gas Stroke. While you can hit some of those with Mega Chomp, you can't hit Nevermare super effectively with Mega Chomp. You can't even hit not Sober's Gas Stroke. You can't hit Lashent super effectively with Mega Chomp, so Frost Beam's gonna help us out there. And your wave breaker here, this is mainly for the earth and the fire types. We want to ensure that we kill stuff like Soul Burst Eruptodon and not leave them low. So that's why we're running this. And as for your item, I will really prefer Shade Pearl. Shade Pearl is pretty decent, especially when most of the dark types that you are going to be finding yourself up against to, like Vesperatu, they're most likely never going to want to take a Flash and Flee, so running Shade Pearl is always nice. However, Mysterious Dust is also another good option, so you can make yourself a pretty common swap in to the likes of Soul Burst Krakaloa. And your heavy armor here, this is so if you do not want to run either of these items and want to maximize your melee bulk. Now, onto the TPs. This Luminami is mainly going to specialize in walling or checking stuff like Landtorch, Chienta, all pretty common stuff in this metagame, and generally most melee attackers. You're going to be wanting to run 176 HP with the TPs. This will allow you to get to the max amount of Power Napper HP you can get. If you go any further, if I do recall, then you're not going to be, well, it's pretty much a waste if Power Napper. However, you can invest 200 if you really want to. The range defense investment is to live a smart, nimble 200 range attack TP's Brute Force Thunderstrike. If the Zulong is Electric Essence and you somehow find out about that, then you're not going to be living. And your melee attack stat of 80 is just the leftovers. This is a pretty standard set. However, the next set is going to be a mixed pivot set. I really explained the ability here, and the personality is for Robust Clever. This is mainly so you get a lot better matchups against Soul Burst Eruptodon and Valkyrie, and a lot more range attackers. This is so you can have the dual pivot mixed attacking potential. Honestly, this is just what it's for. And your moveset is going to be the same as for your items as well. And this is the TPs. 176 HP, just the same as always. And with the range defense, you will able to take yourself a 3-hit KO from smart, nimble Eruptodons using a Dark Surge against you. So you're not forced to run Shade Pearl for them. It's still recommended because Soul Burst Eruptodon is still pretty strong, but this range defense is cool. And then your 20 energy just for 250 energy. This is to use 5 Flash and Fleas. And your 144 melee defense, that's the leftovers. You still have the ability to check stuff like Chienta, however, not as strong because you're not at max investment. Anyways, the final set is going to be a smart pivot set. I personally do not like running smart, however, I'll explain the niche later. You're going to be wanting to run robust, smart, very sluggish, and we're still keeping our same moveset. This time, we're going to be running Frost Beam and Maroon. Frost Beam, you'll see why I mentioned this. It's going to be able to 2-hit KO a Nevermare running 48 HP, which is one of the more common stats. Usually, if you are not running Frost Beam, or if you are running Frost Beam and not smart, the Nevermare is going to take a 3-hit KO from you. So getting the jump on Nevermare is actually pretty decent at that. The HP and the range defense is the same investment for the Zulong, and then the energy as well. And your melee defense is the same as always. So with that out of the way, let's get right onto the counters and checks and teammates for Luminami. So Luminami, like I said, I'm pretty much going to be playing as a very good bulky pivot role as a water type, allowing itself to check the likes of Landtorch, Soul Burst Eruptodon, Chienta, and much more. It's just going to be a pivot Lumion. So running plant types is pretty much what I'd recommend. Even if it does have Frost Beam, Lashent is built for it if it's clever, Totab is neutral to it, Gastroke just completely stops it. It doesn't care about Mega Chomp. It's just going to tamp or poison. And Nevermare here is pretty solid for Luminami, just not as recommended as the others because it is weak to ice. So all of these I'd recommend clearly. However, Luminami still has Mega Chomp for Totab. You'll just have to watch out. Using Eclipse and Charonix is also something I suggest, because both of these guys are immune to Flash and Flee. Eclipse pretty much takes advantage of Luminami with Peace of Mind and Scapegoats. As for Charonix isn't much of that because it still has its coverage resisted completely by Luminami, but it does have Spite, so you can do that as well. It can also force Peace of Mind because Luminami can't do anything to it. Other than this, I would really suggest toxic types such as Vanillin, Snagoop, and Venusaur. They pretty much do pretty well against what Luminami can do against them. They can either poison them to hit KO Luminami or just outright beat it and use it for setup. So moving on, Luminami cores. Luminami cores is mainly going to synergize with offensive cores and defensive ones. Luminami doesn't have a particular great offensive teammate it would want. It's mainly there as just an overwide enabler such as the likes of Your Snack. Other than this, you want to run Luminami with mainly Tatab and Soul Burst Raptidon. Honestly, this is a core I've used a lot. Soul Burst Raptidon allows itself to be a pretty common swap in for many of the plant types, at least offensively. It of course does not want to try in Gastroke with a 1v1. However, it can swap in or double predict into Lashant, Nevermare, Tatab, and of course it can stay in and kill either of them. Tatab has Jungle Jutsu or Timber Thrash, which is mainly going to be for other opposing waters, and again, it just pairs well with Luminami and Soul Burst Raptidon. Another version of this is Searnite Luminami Nevermare, a more bulkier form. Like I said, there's really not a lot I can really recommend because Luminami pairs well with basically anything that has a pulse of offense. Anyways, what you really want to know are defensive cores. I personally like running Luminami with Your Snack. It's a very common pivot core, and you can finish it off with a Lashent or a Dragoon that just pretty much stops what these guys are weak to melee defense wise. Dragoon stops Your Soul and Desperatu from breaking either of these guys. Lashent covers itself pretty well with these guys as well. It benefits from Luminami stopping fire types, and if you do not want to run Your Snack and want to run something more passive and consistent, I would rather run Soul Burst Krakaloa instead. Other than this, Luminami and Infernix, I have to mention this core considerably because Power Napper's semi-sol cores are very solid. This is probably one of the most dated cores ever. However, it still does pretty decent well in the Colosseum simply because the Power Napper from Luminami and Infernix just makes it so it is very hard to kill both of them. Synergize wise and their typing wise as well as matchups, they also synergize pretty well. It's just the fact that Infernix is kind of bad right now. So that out of the way, let's get to the conclusion and my thoughts on Luminami. So overall, I really do not need to convince you guys at this point. Luminami is still a very great threat in this metagame. It's one of the most versatile Lumines that you can ever put on a team. The only thing right now that Luminami is kind of in competition with is Jalusa. Jalusa is basically Luminami, except it is less melee defensive focused, but it has the potential to set up on a lot more range attackers. But Luminami still has the niche as the best or one of the best slow pivots in the game. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Make sure you like and subscribe for more. And of course, this is Con and Stoop signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.